Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and if you've been following my Twitter, Instagram, stream, all of the above, you would know that for my Easter break, I went to the Grampians in Victoria, which is a big-ass sort of mountain range region in Australia, and it's very famous for its climbing. Now, I went there primarily with my brother and good friend to climb, but at the exact same time there is also a very big running event there that I partake in for track sort of racing, the biggest one of our year, and I also ran a few events there, the 400 meters and the 550 meters. Got plenty of videos from the weekend, and it was, I'd say, pretty much the longest weekend of my life because of the sheer amount of exercise I did during that time. So I wanted to quickly recap it for you guys, just show you a few of the highlight videos, talk about what we did and the experience of the weekend overall. And then, that's basically just going to be a quick video that isn't Path of Exile related for a change, but it does go into my other two loves and passions, and that is climbing and running. So I just have here a folder of all my pictures and videos for the weekend. We took plenty of videos while doing our climbs, and there's videos of me, my friend, my brother, and a few other people as well, but for the most part we'll try and focus on the videos of me. And basically what the Grampians is walking up, or at least this area is walking up this sort of trail and this mountain. Let me just make my cam a bit smaller. There it is. So you walk up this trail up into this massive mountain, which doesn't look like much from here, but this has to be like 50 meters up or something, all the way to the top. It's pretty big, pretty sheer rock faces, and it's a bit of a treacherous walk up to the top over here, which is like roughly over here, which is where we're climbing. This is the hollow mountain at the top, which has some of the best bouldering in the world. So it's a bit of an approach just through some rocky terrain. At some parts it takes something like 20 minutes to walk up to where we wanted to walk to, and then there's just me and my friend just in front of it, posing for the camera before we're about to embark on our walk. Now he's got a mat on his back there, and so did some of those people there. You could see that's what bouldering is. You basically walk up to just boulders, really big rocks, ones that maybe go 5, 6, 7 meters high, something like that, and then you'll climb up to the top of it, and you have these bouldering mats with you that you place underneath yourself, just in case you fall or slip or whatever. There's a bit of a safer landing. And that's basically all there is to bouldering. So the very first boulder we came across was this, which is supposed to be a V4. Now, as far as grading is concerned, a V4 is supposed to be something just a little bit harder than easy, let's say. It actually corresponds with the Path of Exile mapping system quite nicely. So you have someone there spotting you just in case you fall down, and they try and push you towards the actual mat itself. And then here is my brother doing the same climb, but actually successfully, because I just missed that hold. So it does actually correspond to the mapping system quite well. Anything from like T1 to T16 roughly is the same as V1 to V16 in the bouldering scale, because that's pretty much the grades out there. V1 is going to be pretty damn easy, should be able to get through it no problems. V16 is only for the elitist of elite climbers and the best guys in the world. The stuff we were climbing on the weekend is something like V6, V7, maybe some V8, but primarily around the V7 region, which is decent, but nowhere near as good as the best guys out there. So the idea is you then try and get to the top of the boulder, like so, as he's slowly trying to do. Get to the top of the boulder, climb on top of it, and that's your top. Then you are finished. So it is a little bit dangerous because you don't really know where you're placing your hands, where you're placing your feet. It's kind of trying to make it up as you go. It's not as obvious as in a gym, and that's why it can be a little scary, because you might slip over here, you might not grab the right thing, and you're also, let's say, a few meters off the ground. But that's why you have the mats at the bottom, and that's why you have people trying to spot you and help you fall as cleanly as possible. So you get to the top, and that is a winner. We then moved on, and you have me doing this climb, which is a V5 supposedly, so a little bit harder, and I think I'm the only one that actually finished this climb because I probably gave it the most attempts and the others didn't care as much. A bit of an amusing clip here because you can just hear someone in the background having a struggle.
I think I got to like up there.
Nice.
Come on.
Yeah, because the top out's
I don't know if that's still gonna work.
Come on, nice.
I do keep going, not quite sure what the next move is like, what the next hold is like.
feet in a good spot.
Supposedly it's pretty terrible and I'm scared to go for it.
I was gonna say, is that the net for you trying to go for the next one? Yeah. That's all there is to it. So you can go for the shit slope and hope it's good.
So the idea is the next move is to go for this sloper, which is just kind of a bad hold, a bit rounded over, and not really sure how I'm supposed to catch it at that point, so I was pretty scared to commit into it. I did have, let's see, another good solid go at it and actually get it done in the end. So this is my top or send of the V5, and I'll try and guide us through it a bit. Starts out with a shit slope as well into an okay rail. It's got a little bit of an edge to it, but it's still very hard to grip. Goes into a big move. It's kind of pocketed over, so it's pretty strong, pretty well grabbable. A few little moves here or there into a pretty bad pocket, and then you're supposed to go for that next big slope and just hope it sticks, because we didn't really know how it was.
Yeah.
Actually stuck it.
Hold on, still your feet out and then get up and to the right, and it's really good. It's a flat ledge.
And the idea is you're supposed to go over the top. I don't know anything about what the top is like, and turns out it's pretty bad up there. And I couldn't really see what I was doing, what I was grabbing, and at this point I can't see my feet at all, so my footwork is a little bit clumsy.
Yeah. Nice, that's it.
Get your left foot on. Go lower. Right.
Yeah,
that hole, yep.
In the pocket. Yeah.
Nice.
Dude, as soon as I crested, the sun was straight away.
So I got that top, I managed to finish it. As soon as I got over the top, a whole bunch of sun hit me in the face, because it's something like 9 a.m. at that point, since we got a very early start to the day with that one. Tried to climb all day long. So after that one, we moved on to a cave sort of thing. This is a picture of me on the climb. So it's inside a cave, and I'll give you guys a taste of what the actual climb looks like. So to start with, we'll grab how about this video here. It's inside the cave, this little sort of cave crack. It's not a huge cave or anything, and basically upside down the entire time. The entire left-hand side is all sort of slopey bad pieces, as you can see here, and the entire right-hand side are all little pockets, and you've got to try and get through the climb, moving your feet up, figuring out what's best for you and how best you can grab everything along the way. I was getting pretty tired at this point already.
Go to the shadow.
And then my foot slipped out. Couldn't quite go for the next move. Then show you a clip of my brother trying the same problem. So roughly this one here. My brother's about 1.5 years older than me. He does do a lot more outdoor climbing and also a lot more rope-based stuff. So he's got a lot better endurance, but similar sort of build. Pretty, thin, muscular, and can climb around the same difficulty. Sometimes a bit harder, sometimes a bit less hard. But overall, probably a much more complete climber than I am, given the outdoor stuff too. So we're still trying to just figure out the moves and the holds themselves.
Come on, go get it. Push.
You're supposed to come out of the cave, and we couldn't quite stick that move. So I did manage to stick all of those moves individually, but putting them together I couldn't quite end up doing it. And our friend Rohan here actually did manage to do it. He had his own sequence, he had his own version of how to do it, managed to do the entire climb. So you come out of the cave and you match onto a certain piece, and then that is supposed to be a top. This is V7 Rise of the Machine. And as far as these climbs are concerned,
That's it.
people establish these climbs themselves. They go around to these rocks, to these boulders.
Yes.
Yes.
You've got that big move. They figure out certain routes. They say, you know, you do this, you do that, you do this, you get to that top, and that is a certain boulder, and then they grade it themselves, and other people can compare and say if it's worth that grade. And eventually it'll all make into a guidebook, which is a pretty thick guidebook with hundreds of problems that you walk around this place, find the various problems, the boulders, and then try and replicate those exact climbs, and then you're doing the same climbs that they were doing.
Nice.
But for the most part, everything is pretty established, and you're just copying what someone else has done and just having a good time up in the Grampians. So that was a 7-hour climbing day for the first day for us. We then went down to the track straight after that, and I ran a 400 meters. So it's down around this loop here on the grass, and this is just the next day already. In the 400 meters, I came third in my heat, which isn't good enough for the final. Had a bit of a sleep, went down to the track the next day as well. It's me just having a walk after a warm-up, and did a 550 meter race. So this is the actual race itself, the video of the heat for my 550 meters, and I ended up winning this heat, and that progresses me to the final. And as far as these races are concerned, they are handicapped, so you start off at different points on the track, depending on how good or bad you are, and the better you are, the further back you're starting, or the closer to the absolute start, the worse you are, and the further up you start. So the idea is that everyone finishes at the exact same time, but maybe someone's running better that day. And over time, as you run more and more races, they find your exact mark and where you're supposed to be based off of your ability. So in this one, I start pretty far back, and I'm in the black, and they do call me Kostya Kadoshin.
And the blue and white to lead the way. That'll be Jared Dartnell. Coming around and following him is Jeremy Hill. So Dartnell, number 12 in first from Hill.
That's right there, in the black.
Winner of this event here in the orange in third. Right on his hammer is Kostya Kadoshin from South Australia in the black. And coming around after him in the grey is Chad Ryan. They've got a break to the next runner in white, Lachlan Bonney, who ran really well on the 400 yesterday. And on his back in the blue is Connor Ogilvie. So a field of 7 heads into the back. 300 to run, still out in front. It's Dartnell, followed by the red. All the red white dropping back at Jeremy Hill. It's the grey who's making ground now. And the long strider, Chad Ryan, is going up after the leader now in Kadoshin. So Kostya Kadoshin is leading the South Australian with Chad Ryan on the chase after him. Also coming into it now, the white there of Lachlan Bonney. They seem to be the three. So the South Australian still out in front. Kostya Kadoshin, and he's still got a couple of metres on Chad Ryan, and Lachlan Bonney starting to wind up after Kadoshin. Kadoshin in front, the little fella holding strong out in front, the long stride to Bonney after him, but the South Australian is just gonna get there. Kostya Kadoshin from Lachlan Bonney.
So that was the win of the heat of the 550, which progresses me to the final. You got to win your heat out of the 4 heats, and then also the next 4 fastest times make it through to the final. And it's pretty cutthroat. It's very hard to make it into a final, so I don't do that too regularly in these races. So you have a 5-hour break and then run the actual final itself a little bit later. And for context, by this point I had already climbed for 7 hours. I ran a 400, then a 550. And for everyone else, this is a day off during the climbing. For me, it's a day on still running. So I was pretty goddamn tired, and my legs do kind of give out, man. I'm here in the green this time around, starting pretty far back.
Just behind him is Donorico in the yellow. It's a margin back to the 3 back markers. Chimney in blue, getting around him is Reed in the red. Bonnie on his back as they go past the Hall of Fame. In light rain, they go down the back straight, and still out in front is the purple of Nick Howland.
And as well as that, I should mention that you can bet on these races, and both my brother and friend put some money down on me to try and win at 4-1 odds. He's the one currently filming as well, my brother, that is.
The chase is on. Sammy Samatucci in the black. On his shoulder in the pink is Miss Palmer. Starting to go around
Come on.
now in the green is Kostya Kadoshin.
Come on.
Still not out of it is Aaron Downs. from the back. Young's the rare Jacob Reed, who's close enough, is good enough.
Come on.
The top bend, and in the green, Ocean. He's gone up to challenge now with the black of Sabatucci. Sabatucci, Kadoshan, turn for home. Sabatucci is
Come on.
Reed, we like the red, but Jamie Sabatucci strikes the lead, and he's going to take it to the down. 550 yards up in the air.
Fucking breaks my heart watching that because I knew that I was spent, I knew I was exhausted. I knew I didn't really have anything to fully finish that race, to close it out, especially at around about, let's say, where was it, this point here maybe? Round about here. When I finally take off, I'm with a few other guys in front, and I know that if I start slowing down at that point and save my energy for the end, I might get boxed in a bit. So I had to just absolutely go around the other guys to put myself in a good position, but I just did not have the legs at the end of the race, and end up coming something like 5th, which is good enough to win about $200, I think. Which is still not bad, but definitely really wanted to get a win in on that one, and it's a bit of a shame. That's about as good as I've ever managed to do at these sorts of races. It's a very big event, and I've at one point come second to win $800, I think, but I haven't ever quite closed out and won one of those races. And a whole 7-hour climbing trip before and after isn't the best way to prep for it. So this is us climbing up to the next part of the mountain. You're basically just off of sheer rock face here as you're going up. And you can see from this picture here, perhaps, that we're basically on top of the mountain, and that's all just steep drop off and cliff faces and all that all around us. So it is pretty high up and a little bit scary getting there, but it's worth it in the end. And we started off by climbing in this sort of little cave here. That's, once we got to it, sort of just a cave with a few little problems in it. And the first problem we do, this one here, is a pretty easy one, just a V1, which is supposed to be a warm-up. So it's fairly cold in the morning, like 8 or 9 a.m. Pretty damn cold, and you're just warming your hands up, your muscles up on the easier stuff. And this for us is a bit of an easier climb, but you still have to figure out, you know, where all your hands and feet go, and try and do it as efficiently as possible.
Yep, and up into the roof.
And then you come out of the cave and finish by just hitting a top, and that's good enough to call it a finish. Come on. No, I believe we call that a top. After that, we did move on into some slightly harder shit. Let's say this one here. Maybe. I think this is supposed to be a V4 or a V5. So you start out on a rail into a really bad crimp, into another really bad crimp. Now crimps are just strictly little holds or little sort of rails that you can only put a few fingers onto. And that is the act of a crimp.
Nice.
One more. Jug City.
Managed to get through the hard moves and make the first ascent of this climb all the way up to the top. And then you just finish off on the top, and we call that a win once again, because getting over the top of this one's pretty easy and not necessary unless we're really try-harding it, which we did on the next climb. The next climb we did was supposed to be an attempt at a dyno. So a dyno is a dynamic move, and in this event here, you are just going from a really bad slope into a really pretty decent pocket. So this pocket up here is what we're going to try and move to, and that's a big dynamic move to get to it. Boom! Missed it. So initially when we walk up to this climb, we didn't think we could do it. It looked a bit too unrealistic, but as you try more and more, it gets a bit better and a bit easier, and you can start to think, maybe I can do this. That's what the pocket looks like. That's where our hands are going. Something like that. So I do believe our friend Matt here, in this one, or this one, I reckon this one, Gives us a good demo of what the moves are supposed to look like, and then also a nice highlight of what the hold that we're actually pulling a lot of our weight off of looks like. So you start off of a pretty good rail into a decent little crimp, into a pretty bad slope, which does not have much on it, and then you jump up to the big pocket. And we were sitting on this climb for 1-2 hours maybe until someone finally got it, and then another person got it too. So that's what we're dealing with.
Oh, there's nothing there.
There's not much there, and you brush the holds and the pieces that you're climbing on to get rid of the chalk, any other dust, sediment, whatever, and that gives you a bit more friction on the hold that you're going for. So in the end, I did manage to get the first ascent of this climb. That's going to look something like this. Took us a good couple of hours. You lose the extra bit of weight from your shirt, and all of a sudden, dreams start to look like reality.
Yes! Nice. Just go on the jogs. Yeah, there you go.
Nailed it.
Shirts off, yeah.
Then my brother went in and managed to make the ascent as well, a little bit after me. So it does help that once you see someone else do a climb, it actually starts to feel a lot more realistic. And then that's why there are often things called send trains, where a bunch of people can then finish a climb one after the other, because you're kind of working a problem together, you're all very close together, and then one person gets it and everyone else sees it as possible and can also maybe get it too. He was pretty pumped about getting that top as well. We then moved around to the main cave and gave another climb, which was a V5, but honestly felt a lot harder, a bit of a go. So I will show you my very, sort of painful attempt in the end. I believe I was talking over the top of it when I first started the video. It's all upside down. It's just a few heel hooks and a few toe hooks. So, you know, you're trying to find your heel in various places. And a few little pockets, a few bad slopers. And this is one of my last sort of climbs that I was doing for the day, already 6 or so hours into the day. And my endurance and my skin is just gone by this point. So everything hurts, and I am just struggling to even stay on the wall. That's the biggest move of the climb for me, that I finally stuck during the climb. So I was pretty excited to get that far, but I'm really running low on energy at this point and can hardly grab even the best pieces.
Move the pads, Matt. Pads, Matt.
There you go. Keep breathing. Come on, aim for the crack. Yeah, hold it. Come on. Come on. Right foot in the pocket.
Dead.
Oh, I was gassing so bad.
Fuck.
Kidding. Dude, I used all of my energy to get to there. 100%.
Oh shit, I'm there. What am I doing now?
That's a top record.
So I actually managed to run out of energy, and for just a bit more context, this is going to be my brother finishing the climb. He does it slightly differently in the hardest moves, the hardest part of the climbs. And like I said earlier in the video, he's got much better endurance than I do, so by the end of the day he's still got a good amount of energy to be able to get through climbs like this, whereas I was just running completely low, and if it was a fresh day, probably could have actually gone ahead and done the climb, but I had no skin and no energy. But he makes it look pretty damn clean in the end, even though we were working on this climb for like 2 hours. Everything just kind of clicked together, and he managed to get a pretty clean send.
That big thing's not that great. Good job. Oh, nice. Funny.
Nailed it. We did get plenty of videos. There's just a few pictures maybe as well that I can show you guys. In the end, off of just the mountain here. So that's all the trees and a few other mountains. While we're on top of the mountain, you can see that in the background. Just kind of hanging it to prevent my inevitable doom. Not there. About that one. Yeah. Just off of a nice rock face. There's a good amount of rock underneath me, so it's nothing too dangerous. But after that is a really steep drop off to basically your doom. And there's a picture of me and my brother. And once again, just in front of the cliff face. Not that, not that, not that. This over here is one of the most famous climbing walls in the world called the Taipan Wall. That's something we didn't actually end up climbing because it's just purely rope-based, not bouldering. And this thing is something like 50 meters up, so it might not look that big on the picture, but trust me, it is absolutely massive. And yep, that's just a nice picture amongst brothers, posing in front of one of the best climbing walls in the world on top of a huge mountain, getting some bouldering done. So that's it for the wrap-up for that entire weekend, guys. So I went 7 hours of climbing one day, into a race, into the next day doing 2 races, into the next day doing 7 hours of climbing, and that was my Easter break. It's 5 hours driving there and back as well, so we did a fair amount of driving, and that was what I would say is one of my longest weekends ever. That's just the first real few days off I've had in quite a while from streaming, and it was to do some extremely physically exhausting stuff, but basically how I would most want to spend my time off from streaming, because just sitting around at home feels like, well, maybe I should just start streaming. So if I want an actual mental break, if I want to actually have some time off, then getting out there and doing something else is definitely the way to do it. So that's probably the only climbing, running content you're going to see for a while. As always, back into Path of Exile. Hope you guys had a good break too for Easter. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.